The format for this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcements, a coffee and snack break, and then our main speaker. Our first speaker for tonight is John A.
Hi, everybody. My name's John. I'm an alcoholic. And the most important person to remember that is me. I don't know where to start, really. Perhaps born and raised in Playa del Rey. My whole life growing up, I went to St. Anastasia, which is up the road. And I was told drugs and alcohol are bad. Drugs and alcohol are what lead people down bad paths. Drugs and alcohol are the things that bad people do. And so I avoided it for a long time. And when I went to high school, I went to a party and I drank a beer because I was trying to be a part of with the other kids. And what happened was nothing. Nothing really happened. I drank that beer and nothing bad, nothing good. I just kind of walked away and I went, that wasn't anything like anybody ever told me it was going to be. And so time went on. I'd drink beer here and there. I'd hang out. And then I did a trip down to Mexico with my dad and some of his buddies. We went down to K55, got introduced to drinking tequila, smoking pot. My reaction was, holy crap, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I have arrived. This is it. And that's what happened. I got back from the trip to Mexico, and it was on. And there was no turning back for me. It was very much like that switch had gotten flipped and broken off. And I was told what happens in Mexico stays in Mexico, and it didn't stay in Mexico. And to save you the story, because it's not that exciting, it took me basically to a place where I didn't want to end my own life, but I was okay if it ended. And I was just drinking and doing drugs in an effort to try and bring myself to oblivion. I had no desire to do the life that my parents were allowing me to do. I had everything laid out for me. All I had to do was show up and participate. All I had to do was go to class, do well, and I was doing everything I could to distract myself from that, avoid it, run away. And the thought had crossed my mind at one point that maybe the problem is marijuana, because I almost checked into a psych ward at one point, eating too many edibles. And I knew that alcohol was a problem too, because when I drank, I wanted to smoke, and therefore alcohol was the incendiary agent. But, I had that experience, and my reaction was, well, maybe I just don't do edibles. Maybe that's the problem. And I white-knuckled it for about 20 days or so. I started drinking beer again, started getting back into, drinking tequila, smoking weed again, and it was on. And what happened on my last night of drinking was that I was in my room alone up in Westwood, drinking a bunch of beer, smoking a bunch of weed. None of it was working. I was trying so hard to recapture what alcohol and drugs had done for me, and it wasn't doing it. And my friend walked in and she looked at me and she just said, dude, I don't know how you can do it. And for whatever reason, that cut through the fog. And I had this moment of clarity where I just went, dude, I don't know how I can do it either. And the next morning I woke up hungover, so I smoked some weed. And the day after that is my sobriety date, which is October 20th, 2012. And the last 11 and a half years have been an interesting journey, a journey of coming to AA, and I started in Marijuana Anonymous, where it was really important to identify with the way that people smoked weed, the relationship they had with that substance. But I've found my recovery is based in Alcoholics Anonymous because I drank just the same. I just, when you read in the 12 and 12 in step 1, it talks about John Barleycorn, like that's me. That's my story. And I found that, I read through step 1 in the 12 and 12, and it talks about who cares to admit to complete defeat unless this is the only thing we do to survive. Like if the life that I had been living was worthwhile, if I was running so hard from this thing, like I had no other way to live. The book talks about it where it says we couldn't live with it and we couldn't live without it. I found myself at that place where I was just, I was at a loss, and I was able to ask for help. And I stuck around AA for a while, got some commitments, showed up. I thought attendance was the way that you got sober and stayed sober. And it lasted for a bit, and things were good. And then over time, I say today, and I could say proudly that I love Alcoholics Anonymous, but that hasn't always been the case. Because I got resentful, and I found meetings that I didn't relate to, and I wasn't willing to have a new experience. I was stuck in how things had been, and I was stuck in what I thought things were, and I wasn't willing to listen to a new perspective or read the literature or ask for help from somebody new. And I got distant from the program. I moved down to Orange County. I was looking for West LA meetings in Orange County, and spoiler alert, they're not there. But what happened is that I got this experience of restlessness, irritability, and discontent in sobriety. And in that process, I found myself contemplating taking actions that were not actions that I wanted to take, not honorable things to do. Drugs and alcohol had been removed as a solution. They were my solution that became their own problem. And for me, it was just, I knew where that went, and knowledge of that isn't enough to stay sober, but I just knew that I didn't want to go down that path. And I'm grateful that something inside me just said, dude, just ask for help. And what I did was I reached out to some mutual friends, my friend Spencer. At one point, he asked me, he's like, how long you been sober? And I was like, like 8 years. He's like, what meetings do you go to? I'm like, I don't really. He's like, well, so how's that working for you? I'm like, to thy known self be true. Because thank you. I was pretty good at, saying the right things and knowing the context in which to say the right things, but I hadn't really had the experience behind it. I was really good at just saying the words. I wasn't so great at doing the action. And what I found is that in asking that man for help, Spencer asked me how I was doing this thing. I met my current sponsor through that guy, and what happened was that I just had this compulsion. I was like, dude, maybe I should really give this like a solid go. Like not just like lip service, not just like, cafeteria style, go through the line, take what I want and leave the rest. Like maybe I need to do this all the way for me 100%. And all the things that I don't want to do, maybe it's time to face the music and do it. And so what I did was I asked for help. And when I called Eric, I said, hey man, maybe like kind of sort of you could take me through the steps. And he paused and he went, John, are you asking me to sponsor you? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, then ask. And so I did. And in that process, I said, Eric, will you sponsor me? And he said, yes. And so what happened for me is in this process of asking for help in recovery, in this process of going through the steps, in the process of doing this, I find that when I tell somebody the truth and when I ask for help, and it's something as simple as like, I'm going through this thing, I need some help. The response from people in Alcoholics Anonymous is, okay. And that's it. No judgment, no criticism, just welcome. Okay, how can I help? And I've found that, the time that I've spent sober, the time that I've spent in recovery, it avails me my experience of doing this thing. And just because somebody else may have more calendar time or more experience in this program, it doesn't preclude me from having my own experience of this thing. I've found that in that dynamic, in this experience of doing these, not just reading them on the wall every meeting that I've ever been to and wondering what they actually were, in doing the steps and in understanding and practicing the traditions, I gain my own experience of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. And this process allows me to face life on life's terms and have a different reaction to it than what I was left to at my own devices. I develop a relationship with a God that I don't understand. I am able to connect with my fellows, and I'm able to do really fun things like get up on Saturday and cruise up to LA, nearby where I grew up, and come speak at a meeting. And if you told me 12 years ago that like this would be something I was looking forward to on the weekend, I'd tell you that you were high, just like me. And the bottom line for me is that the power of this program is that I get to have my own experience of this thing by doing it. And if I work with somebody else or take somebody else through the steps, they get to not have my experience, but they get to have their own. And they get to do these things, and they get to practice these principles, and they get to get their own understanding of it. And those might look different, and that's the power of the program. It's what my friend Jack likes to say is that, we need everybody exactly as you are right now. Not how you're supposed to be in 10 weeks, not how you're supposed to be in 10 years, but where you are right now. Because I've had the experience of going into meetings and having a speaker tell my story, or at least bits and pieces. And it's those moments where I just go, okay, I'm not alone. I don't have to be alone, and I don't have to live like this. There's a better way, and it's been an incredible journey. And I feel like, I'm the type of person who really wants the results before I do the work. I want to get the prize. I want to have the spiritual awakening without doing any of the steps. I want to just like show up and be like, yeah, cool. So can you just give me the juice, and then I'm going to get back to my life and do this thing. And the experience of, growing and seeking and praying and learning what that means and it being different than how I thought it was, or learning like how to meditate, or learning like how to help somebody. Like often helping somebody for me is picking up the phone and just saying, how you doing? It's not like brain dumping big book knowledge on them. That doesn't help. What helps is just being there and being the hand. And the thing that I always try and remember, and is something that I say at the end, or we say at the end of my Monday night group, is we repeat this responsibility statement of AA, which is, I am responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there, and for that, I'm responsible. I think the key component of that is that when somebody asks, then I'm able to help. But I was not convinced to do this until I was ready to do it. So I don't believe, and this is my opinion, I don't think there's anything I can say if you're not willing to do this stuff that's going to get you to do it. It's like, but I hope that if you do decide to do this, and if you do take these steps and you do walk this path with us, you get what you get, which I've found is a life absolutely worthwhile, and something that is so much better than everything that I was running from before I got sober. So with that, if you didn't relate to anything I said, it's all right, because we got Patrick as our main speaker. And I appreciate you all for having me come out. Thanks.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, our main speaker will share his experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Patrick C. from Tustin.
My name's Patrick. I'm an alcoholic. Thank John for coming with me and doing the 10 minutes. I listened to about 45 minutes on the way here. You got the best 10 minutes of it. It was awesome. Happy birthday to all the birthday guys and girls, and welcome if you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous. And last place I wanted to be was Alcoholics Anonymous. I come from an Irish Catholic family. I'm the fifth of 5 kids. The only time there was not drinking at my house was during Lent. My father used to quit drinking during Lent, and we hated Lent because Lent was long. You know, it was just 40 of the longest days of our life. My dad, as it turns out, my dad was restless, irritable, and discontent around us when he wasn't drinking, and we were just as restless, irritable, and discontent around him because we weren't comfortable when he was at home all the time. When he's drinking, it's perfect chaos in our house, and we can deal with that. But when he was home every day, and we would have, paint the house, clean the backyard, just he was there, and it was tough. And I knew that if that's what quit drinking was, Lent, that wasn't going to work for me. It was uncomfortable. My sobriety date's March 1st, 2001. And picked that day. Picked a bunch of days before then. Didn't do anything. Used to like to make the announcement, I'm getting sober today. That way people don't ask as many questions. And on that day, something happened that's never happened to me before, and I wanted help. I've been to treatment centers. When I was growing up, I made a decision because I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I didn't want to be like my dad. We didn't know it was alcoholism. We just thought my dad got caught drinking a lot in his car and crashing it. We didn't know what that was it. My dad used to get a lot of DUIs, and my dad's solution for the DUI was he would wait until he had a few, and then he would pony up like at the next one. He would pay them all up at the same time. So there would always be a warrant out for him. And at our house, the rule was what goes on in our house stays in our house. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the first things I heard was what goes on here stays here. I thought this will be easy for me. I've been living my whole life that way. And so my dad would get DUIs, and one of his solutions to that at one point was he built a gate to the house behind ours, and he drank with the guy behind us, and he would park at his house. And then they would come to serve the warrant, and the rule at our house was if they ever come knocking on the door, have you seen your dad? The answer is no. And I thought that was normal growing up. I guess it wasn't going on everywhere, but it was on our block. Everybody was drinking. And we had a thing hanging in our kitchen, Red Ortiz bail bonds. I could say his name now because he's dead. That probably wasn't normal either. Red Ortiz was a family friend, and that's who we knew to call if my dad called from jail and had got another DUI. And my dad wasn't mean. I didn't think either way of it. He made us all street tough and street smart, and if you did something wrong, you paid for it. And we went through our childhood just thinking that that was just the way things were going to be when my dad drank, and those are the things that happened. And then something happened. My dad got sober. When I was 18 years old, my dad got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we knew that was different from Lent. because it was a different man. He was happy, and when he said, I'm leaving to go to a meeting, he came home the same night. He didn't disappear for periods of time, and the relationship between him and my mom and all of us was completely different. None of us were living at the house at the time, but we were all active in our family and doing stuff, and we could tell that Alcoholics Anonymous worked. And for the first time in my dad's life, we could see that he was making strides and he was comfortable. My dad had a sponsor. His name was Chuck D, I'm sorry, and I'll get back to him in a minute because he clicks into my story later on. And I saw that group of people when my dad was hanging with guys in Alcoholics Anonymous, what they were doing and the things, the life they were leading and the things they were doing. And my mom was happier. Everything was fantastic. So I have proof that Alcoholics Anonymous worked. Unfortunately, I'm not alcoholic. I'm not coming here. And I was in my early 20s, very early 20s, and my dad started handing me literature for Alcoholics Anonymous. I worked for the family business, and my dad would say, listen, you might want to read this, and I would read it, and I'd think, I don't know why they gave that to me. And then he told me, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and in your case, it hit the root. And he said, we're saving a seat for you, and I know I'm not going to ask where, because I know what he's talking about, and I don't want to know anything about it. And he gave me a speaker tape of a guy named Norm Alpe, and Norm Alpe was fast talking and really funny. Even if you're drunk, it was a funny speaker tape. And I'd listen to it and think it's really funny, but I don't know why he gave it to me. And that was 23. I got sober at 38, and I got that tape at an AA convention, and I listened to it. And I remember listening to it, and I started crying, and I thought, what the hell am I crying for? This is funny. This is good to hear. Called my sponsor, and I said, hey, I'm driving down the street listening to this speaker tape, and I'm crying. And he said, remember I told you that you'd feel better. I said, I don't feel better. I'm crying. I'm driving down the freeway crying. I mean, we were raised not to cry. And he said, no, when I said you're going to feel better, I mean you're going to feel better. You're going to feel feelings. You're going to feel anger. You're going to feel hate. You're going to feel. And I thought, oh, God. So, like I say, my dad was sober. It wasn't for me. I didn't want anything to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got married, had a couple of kids. My house looks normal from the outside. If you drive by, it looks like a normal house, but it's chaotic inside. You don't know. I'm the guy that says I'm going to the store for milk on Tuesday, and I come home on Friday. I actually went out to get paint when my wife and I were selling a condo we had bought, and her mom was over at our house painting, and I left to get Navajo white paint on a Sunday, about 10 in the morning. Navajo white paint, I think, is the most common paint in the world. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure. And I left at 10 a.m. and I called at 11, and I told her I'd been to 2 Home Depots. This is before cell phones, thank God. I said I'd been to 2 Home Depots. They don't have them. And now I'm on my way to the 3rd Home Depot, in another city. I'd already picked up what I needed and wasn't planning on coming back. And I was gone. I got home on Thursday. And my mother-in-law died of Alzheimer's a few years ago, and I was sitting there visiting her with one day, and she couldn't tell you what she had for lunch. And she all of a sudden looked up at me and said, remember, she was an Alabama woman. She goes, Pat, remember that day you left for paint on a Sunday? We were painting at your house, and you didn't get home till Wednesday. And I said, see, you're losing it. I got home on Thursday. And that's the kind of guy I am when I'm drinking. I'm not very good. I can't keep showing up. I can't make it to things. And so as I'm getting older and people are starting to notice my drinking and have a lot of questions for me, my parents, like I say, try and intervene. I'm working in the family business, and in 1990, my father gets sick. He gets cancer. And we're having a conversation. He wants me to be the one that takes over the business, but he tells me, you can't take over the business doing the stuff that you're doing because there'll be nothing left. You'll ruin it. I said, I'm arrogant when I'm drinking. I said, I don't care. I'll keep selling. I do good at what I do. I make enough money. I'm okay. And my dad survived that. My dad survived cancer. He survived lung cancer. He lasted 10 more years. And he came out of that, and he came back to work, and I'm still working for him. And he was trying to help me. He was trying to tell me. He was trying to give me the answers to the test of life. And I wasn't biting. I wasn't listening to any of it. He would tell me about some funny stories about some guys in his life, and you should meet these guys. You should come to a meeting with us. And I'm thinking, not a chance. I'm not coming there. So in 1996, my parents called me up and said, can you come by the house? It's like 10 in the morning. I should be working. And I'm not, but I should be. And they said, can you come by the house? We want to talk to you. And I know what they want to talk about. And I get there and they said, would you be willing to talk to somebody about your drinking? And I know what the answer to that question is. The answer is yes. I have to say yes. Of course I'd be willing. My thought was, I talk to people about my drinking every day. At the bar, we're talking about drinking. We're talking about it all day long. I don't have any problem with it. And I got in the car with my parents. We showed up, went to a hospital in Orange, and had a conversation with them. And the lady said, do you have a problem with your drinking? I said, I must. Everybody's talking to me about it. I signed up apparently for an outpatient program, and I think it was 4 days a week, maybe 5. I don't really know. I didn't do much. And I said, okay, I'll do this. And that was April 1996, and I remember it because I was telling people I was sober. I mean, I wasn't, but I was telling people I was. And I went to this place, and I lasted about, I don't know, maybe 8 days. And it was from 6 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock at night. And I went in one night, and I was pretty high. And it's raining outside. It's nighttime, and I'm sweating. And a guy sees me, and he says, hey, why don't you come here for a minute? And I thought, uh-oh. They're going to ask questions. I like to keep my head down when I'm high because I don't want to talk to anybody. And he said, let's check your blood pressure. And I said, oh, not a good day for that. I ate a whole bag of sunflower seeds. It spikes at the salt. And he's hooking me up, and he's looking at my eyes. And he said, you're sweating. It's raining outside. I said, I call on big industrial bakeries for a living. I just left one, and it's really hot in there. Even though it's raining, it's hot in the bakery. And he checked my blood pressure and realized, whew, this guy's not right. And I knew that day that I couldn't go there anymore. So I went home and told my wife the best lie I could come up with. I said, listen, I did so well in that rehab. I was actually like the smartest guy there. I learned in 10 days what it takes normal people like 30 days to learn. And they cut me loose. And my wife looked at me, and then she got on the phone. Her best friend works at Betty Ford. And she told her the story, and her friend said, he's high right now. That has never happened in the history of rehab where anybody was like on the fast track to get it in 10 days in a 30-day program. He's high. She goes, I don't even have to see him. I'll tell you he's high. And that was my first time bouncing around here. And I maintained, I controlled, whatever you want to call it, for a little while. And then, more things happen. I'd get in more trouble. And my parents, my dad got sick again. My dad got sick again, and in 1999. And I went to Betty Ford. I went to Betty Ford in August of 1999. It was like 187 degrees there. Just a stupid time to go to the desert. But I was in trouble, and I thought, this is where I got to go. I can get into Betty Ford and make everything right and be the prodigal son and return while my dad's getting sick. And I went out there, and I stayed sober for, I think, the whole 28 days I was there. And I didn't run into a problem until I got in my car on the way home. And when I was there, I can tell you 2 things about Betty Ford, and I'm not bad-mouthing Betty Ford because it's probably a tremendous program. They had an ice cream machine and a pool. Those are the 2 things I utilized when I was there because I didn't want to get sober. I didn't hear anything they were saying. I didn't care. And then on my way home, I thought, man, I'm breathing through my nose. I had a lot of sleep. I feel great. This must be what it's like to be sober. I should stop and pick something up on the way home. And so I did. And I got home, and like I say, my dad was getting sicker, and I was pretending I was sober. And man, it was a lot of work. Fake sleeping, all the different things you got to do to be sober. My wife watching me like a hawk, and I'd have to pretend I was asleep, and it's just terrible. The first meeting I went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous with my dad back in that 1996 thing. I went to the Heliotrope Men's Stag. If any of you guys have ever been there, sorry, I'm sure you haven't. And it's a room full of guys that want to look in your eyes and ask you, how you doing? Back up. That's how I'm doing. You're a little bit close. So I was really high one day, and I made the announcement that I was getting sober. And I like to make the announcement so they don't ask questions. So I told my wife, today's the day I'm getting sober. And I just got home from work. I've been drinking and doing the other things I like to do all day. And I called my dad to tell him because I should make the announcement to him as well. I got enough money in my pocket. I'm going to go hang out for the night. I don't know how long an AA meeting is, but I figure I can go out for, they must be at least 2 hours. I can pretend I'm at a meeting for 2 hours and then, do what I want to do. And I called my dad, stupidly, drunk. And I said, hey, I'm going to go to that meeting you told me about. And he said, that's great. I've never been to it. Why don't you pick me up and we'll go together? And barely, unscrew my jaw to talk. And I showed up at my dad's house, and my dad said, listen, why don't I drive? And he drove me to the Heliotrope Men's Stag meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And like I say, is anybody high in here right now? Because, man, it is uncomfortable. If you are, you're not going to tell us. So I'm sitting there, and a guy comes up to me named Rocky, and Rocky is frightening. Rocky is looking at me, and Rocky wants to know, hey, how you doing? I'd do better if you backed up, Rocky. There's cards on all the seats, everything's taken, and I'm going to treat it like church. I'm just going to go to the back. I'm going to stand in the back. I don't need to, I don't want to take somebody's seat. And this Rocky guy just took 2 cards and wiped them off the seat. And he said, why don't you 2 sit right here? And I thought, no, I'm good. I'll be back here. He goes, no, those guys aren't coming tonight. And I thought, oh, no. And I'm like right in the middle of the room. And I know they're looking at me. And it's a podium call-up. I don't know what any of this means. I don't know what standing up as a newcomer means. I don't know nothing. And at some point, I must have stood up and said, Patrick, alcoholic. I don't recall. And then the meeting starts, and I'm just watching the clock go backwards, thinking, I got to get out of here. And the guy said, we'd like to hear from our new friend, Patrick. And I thought, oh, my God. And I'm looking around, and there's no other Patrick there. Shockingly, in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a lot of Patricks here. And I thought, I got to go up there. And I went up, and, Patrick, alcoholic. I could barely open my mouth. And I don't know what I said, but I got out of there quickly. And then the meeting ended, and this Rocky guy was on me like, flies. He's, hey, here's what we do here. You can come back next week and greet people. And I'm thinking, man, I don't think so. And as soon as my dad got far enough away from me, I told Rocky, you're not going to see me here again, man. I ain't coming back here. And we started down the stairs after the meeting, and my dad said, what did you think? And I said, it was awesome. I'll probably never drink again. And my dad laughed like that all the way down the stairs. He knew I hadn't heard a thing. And so in 1999, my dad's sick. It's December. I'm pretending to be sober. He knows I'm not, but I'm pretending to be. And I go over to his house, and cancer's on, and he's not going to make it this time. And it's my day to be with him. There's 5 of us. We're all taking turns being at the house. So I'm sitting there talking with him, and he said, have you been to a meeting yet today? And I said, you're dying. I don't want you to take your last breath alone. First of all, I don't know where a meeting is, but I couldn't tell him that. I said, you're dying. I want you to take your last breath alone. He looked me right in the eye, and he said, you're dying too, you a-hole. You just don't know it. And then it started. He said, okay, he started 12-stepping me. I didn't know it was a 12-step because he was the only one in the room that knew what a 12-step was. He started explaining to me what he did in Alcoholics Anonymous. He started explaining to me what goes on here. He gave me his big book. He gave me his 24-hour day book. He said, these are the only people that are going to save your life. And I thought, I'm not going to AA. I went there. It didn't work. I went that one day on a Tuesday, and it was uncomfortable. I didn't like it. I don't tell him that. And I just said, okay. And I listened, and then something happened. I was honest with him. I told him what I was really doing, and I'm never telling anybody what I'm doing. And I said, here's what I'm doing. I said, I just can't stop. And he said, that's alcoholism. And so we had a discussion. I was very honest with him, like I said, and then he died about a week later. He died on December 2nd, 1999. I'd like to tell you that I got sober and I became the great son and everything was fantastic, but that's not how it happens. I went on the next 14 months. I ran and did everything I said I was never going to do. Everything came unhinged. Everything was bad, and I went for help. I went for help in early February, and I went to a hospital, and I went and asked for help, and I signed up for an outpatient program again. And I went there telling myself, do not leave. You have to stay here. There's a mental game going on driving there. You got to stay here. You can't leave. You can't leave here. You're not going to make it. And I went in, and she said, well, we have an outpatient program. And I said, out of my mouth came, that's perfect for a busy guy like me. No, and I can't be out on the street. And I lasted a day. One day, I was on my way home after the first day, and I thought, I've overreacted. I don't really need this. I'm sure I got something that'll work other than this thing. And I called the hospital back because I'm conscientious. I'm up anyway. So I called the hospital up, and I got some nurse, and she said, I said, listen, I think I overreacted. I got this. And she wrote down whatever. Okay, yeah. And The following couple of weeks were pretty bad for me. Like I say, I'm working in the family business still. February is a short month, thank God, because I was really getting beat. And my mom comes over to the house and fires me. She had to come to the house to fire me because I wasn't showing up a lot. She fired me, and I said, do you have any idea who I am? I'm the money guy. I'm the guy that brings in all the money. And she said, you're also a detriment, and you're the biggest thief we have. True. And I thought, oh, man, they're on to me. And I told her, you guys will be sorry. Well, they were already sorry for the last year what I was doing. And then my wife filed for divorce. And I thought, it's like these people are talking. What's going on here? And my wife filed for divorce. Lady came and knocked on the door. You, Patrick? Yeah, she handed me the papers. I thought like I'd won a trip somewhere. And then I read it and thought, unbelievable. I can't believe this. And I did what a smart alcoholic would do. I packed my wife's clothes and her shoes in my truck, and I left. And I left my suicide note on the counter, which is my life insurance policy. I don't want to write, I'm killing myself, because that might bring police or something. I don't really know how that works, but I don't want to do that. But I left it there for her. And then my wife called me and said, hey, have you seen my clothes? I said, I have. I got them. I took your shoes, too. And she said, that's okay. I got your credit card. I'll just go shopping. And I'm driving around with my wife's clothes in the car, and I go to see one of my customers to tell him I'm seeking new employment. And two guys are sitting out on the patio smoking on their smoke break, and they just looked at me. They said, hey, what's going on? And I said, I'm changing jobs. I'm going here or there. I'm not sure where yet. I'll let you guys know. They were very calm, and they said, hey, you got a bunch of women's clothes in your car. I go, shoes, too. They said, anything you want to talk about? I said, no, I'm good. After I got sober, I went back to see those guys. They both pulled out chips. They were sober. And they said, we've been watching you circle the drain. That day you pulled up with women's clothes in your car, we knew it was over. We knew it was a matter of time before we saw you again and you'd be clean. And so that day I went back to the house, had an argument with my wife, and she called the fake 911 call, which I thought, but she was actually calling. I hung up the phone. And I said, the cops are coming, aren't they? And she said, yeah. So I did what any smart alcoholic would do. I left. And I got a block from my house. I made a right turn, and then something happened that's never happened to me before. I stopped. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I made a U-turn and went back to my house. The sheriffs were coming in right behind me. I parked in the driveway, locked the car, and I said, hey, I'm the guy you're looking for. And they said, what's going on? And I told them, here's what happened. And my kids are at the window crying. They're 8 and 10. And I'm looking, I'm thinking, I've turned into the guy I didn't want to turn into. Here's the cops in the driveway. How did this happen? And the cop says something to me, which was, he said, listen, we're going to ask your wife some questions now, and if your stories don't match, we're taking you. Is there anything you'd like to add? I said, well, I'd like to change my story if I could. And I told him a different version, and I went in, hugged my kids, and I thought, I'm going to jail. And they took my wife out there, and then they called me back out. And the guy said, listen, your first story, not so good. Yeah, you're going to jail on that one. Second story's close. We're not going to take you, but if we come back, you're going. Are you going to be all right here tonight? And I said, I'll be all right. I called that hospital back, and I got that same nurse that I told I'd overreacted. And she said, I remember you. You were really busy, weren't you? How's your schedule now? I said, well, as luck would have it, it's wide open. I got nowhere to live. I got no job. She said, do you still have insurance? And I said, yeah. And she says, we have a bed for you. Come on down. Now, the hospital's in Newport Beach. I live in Santa Ana. It's about a 20-minute drive. 7 days. Took me 7 days to get there. I'd get in the car and I'd drive. Some days I'd get as far as Costa Mesa. Some days I wouldn't get out of the driveway. Some days I'd make it all the way to the hospital. I'd circle the parking lot, look in and go, nope, and I'd drive home. And my wife would come home and say, I thought you were checking in today. No beds available. No beds. And I finally showed up there 7 days later, and the lady said, listen, was the drive a little longer than you had anticipated? I said, it sure was. She said, do you still have your car, or did you walk here? I said, no, I still have my car. And that began my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous. I surrendered. When I got there, I surrendered. I drove myself there. Nobody drove me there. Nobody said, you have to be here. I drove myself there. I asked for help. And the important thing is I listened to when they gave me what the answers were. I got a sponsor immediately. Never would have picked this guy. He's younger than me. He's in women's fashion. All I knew is a guy said, he's like you should talk to him. And I went up and talked to this guy. And, I need help. And I had a big book in my hand. And he said, call 3 to 5 alcoholics every day. And then he started giving me stuff. And I thought, well, I got the wrong guy. And then he said, when he's telling me about calling 3 to 5 alcoholics, I'm thinking, I don't know 3 to 5 alcoholics, but before I could say it, the next 3 guys walking up, he said, sign this guy's book. He's new. He's going to call you. And I thought, I don't want to call any of these guys. And I started the next day, I started calling these guys that wrote their name down in my book. I started doing the things that were suggested to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. I left that hospital on a Friday, and I asked him, can you come here on Friday so I can make sure I can get from my house to Santa Ana? Because I don't know that I can get there. I was talking to somebody earlier. There was a panel that came in to do it when I was at the hospital. One of the guys had 32 days. One of the guys had 4 months. I didn't hear anything the 4-month guy had to say, but the 32-day guy wanted to know how he left that hospital and made it home without drinking. How did you leave here and get there? That's the gap. I can't bridge that gap. I said, I don't know how to get home. And he said, well, if there's areas you can't go through, try a different route. Go around some areas if you have to, but here's how I do it. And I said, okay. I got out of the hospital and I started going to meetings. So it's a Friday, so Friday night I went to Rebels in Corona Del Mar. Saturday morning I went to Huggers in Huntington Beach. Saturday night I was at the Hoag Hut speaker meeting. Sunday I was at the beach meeting on 15th Street. Sunday night I was at the Newport Club speaker meeting. Monday I was at the Back Bay Men's Stag. Monday night I was at the Hoag Hospital Men's Stag. Tuesday I was at Nunatics. Tuesday night I was at the Corona Del Mar Men's Stag, not the one I was high at, the one in Costa Mesa. Wednesday I was at the Alton noon meeting. Wednesday night I was at the Hoag Hospital meeting. Thursday I was at a book study on Alton. Thursday night I was at the aftercare program at Hoag Hospital. Friday I went to the Businessmen Men's Stag, and then I was back at Rebels. That's my schedule, and I did that for probably the first 5 or 6 years of my sobriety. I didn't dick around with this thing. I didn't fool around with Alcoholics Anonymous. I got busy in Alcoholics Anonymous because I knew my life depended on it. I knew that my kids' life depended on it. And I thought, I'm going to try this thing, and if it doesn't work, then fine, but I'm not going to mess around with this. I got busy with my sponsor. We started doing the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. When we got to the 4th step, you hear people talk about this, the 4th step, it's scary, this and that. I know everything I did. I never went to sleep for 10 years. I know everything I did. And I sat down with him, and we were getting ready, and he was telling me some things for it, and he said, well, you're Catholic, you went to confession. And I said, hold on. I didn't tell those guys anything. I said, I had the same 4 sins every week. We had to go to confession every week. Disobeyed my parents. I was mean to my brothers and sisters. I had impure thoughts. Every once in a while, I told them I stole a candy bar, 2 Hail Marys, a couple of Our Fathers, yours right as rain. I didn't tell those guys nothing. I don't tell anybody anything. And he said, well, here's how this goes. Here's how the 4th step works. And he laid it out for me. My experience with that is, it's like having sex for your first time. I mean, I was just grateful to be there. I was hoping he knew what he was doing, because I had no idea if we were doing this right or not. And I know that I felt better afterwards. And that's how the 4th step worked for me. And that's how Alcoholics Anonymous has worked for me. I just keep doing the things that are suggested around here, and it works out better. I get embedded in meetings, and I'm going, like I say, I'm going to all those meetings, and I don't always know what people are talking about. And I walk into the Newport Club. It's a Sunday night. There's a guy speaking there by the name of Clancy. I had no idea who Clancy is. It's like a convention. I mean, it's just packed. All these people are in there. I'm thinking, what the hell's going on here? Lady sees me. She can tell I'm new. And she says, honey, do you have a seat? No. There's cards on every seat. She said, this guy's not coming tonight, and see me after the meeting. I said, okay. So I went and saw her, and she said, you need a commitment here. You seem like a pretty smart kid. You could be the chairman. And I thought, that'd be awesome. What does that entail? She said, you see all the chairs? Pick them up and stack them at the end of the meeting. Okay, and from there I was promoted to the mopper, and then I was a cigarette butt picker-upper. I did every commitment of that Sunday night meeting. My Tuesday meeting is an hour-and-a-half meeting. Nunatic's an hour-and-a-half meeting with real coffee cups. Guy who's setting up, and the secretary, I'm about 6 months into it, and he's moving. And a guy in the meeting, Jim, says to me, he's moving, Carl's moving, so we got to get a new secretary. I said, do we have anybody in mind? He said, yeah, just vote with me. I said, okay. And then we get to that part of the meeting, and Jim says, Carl's leaving. We need to get a new secretary. I nominate Patrick. His wife, Lisa, said, I second it. And the guy on the left said, motion to close. And I said, what happened? And he said, you're the new secretary. By the way, you got to get here 45 minutes early. It's already an hour-and-a-half meeting. You got to get here 45 minutes early. You got to make coffee for 100 people. You got to clean the cups afterwards. And I thought, okay, I'll do it. My Monday Back Bay Men's Stag, a guy named Rick Palmer, who's passed. And Rick tells me, because I'm not very quick, I don't listen, Rick says, our setup guy's moving. I said, we got a new setup guy? Because I'm stupid. And Rick goes, yeah, follow me after the meeting. We're having a steering committee. Just vote with me. I said, okay, I got it. Meeting ends, and Rick says, I'd like to introduce Patrick, our new setup guy. Okay. He hands me a schematic. He says, listen, there's 125 guys here. You got to get here early. You got to make coffee. I mean, I'd never made coffee before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I never drank coffee. I was doing other things. I didn't need coffee. So at this Back Bay Men Stag meeting, there was an old guy named Frank Tooley, and he said, we like our coffee strong, kid. I said, all right. So I asked the guy, how many scoops we put in here? He said, 8. I'm going to put in 12 then. Because, I mean, I like more. And Frank was there, and I poured the coffee out, and I put it down for him, and I said, here's your coffee, Frank. And he took a sip. Well, you follow direction. I said, is it too strong? And he said, a little bit. And I told the other guys how much coffee I'd put in. They go, that's a little much. You want to back up on that. So I did that. What they didn't tell me at that meeting was after you do the setup commitment, you become the secretary. But that's too much information for a new guy. They don't want to tell you that, like this is a year commitment. So we get to the end of that, and I'm thinking, thank God this commitment's over. And we have our steering committee meeting at the end of that, and Rick says, I'd like to thank Patrick for being our setup guy for the last 6 months. I'd like to introduce our new secretary, Patrick. And I said, well, wait a minute, what's this? And he said, yeah, once you have the setup committee for 6 months, then you become the secretary. It's a year commitment. He goes, we didn't want to tell you when you had 4 or 5 months. It might scare you. And so if you're new here, be careful. Somebody says, listen, we just need you to do this. It might be like a 2-year deal. You might be GSR or something. Be careful what you listen. You're listening around here, listening to somebody ask you something. Be careful how you answer that question. So these are all the things I did in order to stay sober. My relationship started changing quickly. My wife, I had asked an old guy, hey, when does trust come back? Don't ask old guys questions if you're new here. I said, when does trust come back? He said, at night. I go, all right, what night? He goes, well, we don't know. That's why we keep coming back. And I thought, oh, Jesus. My wife and I, the relationship got better. She didn't want to get divorced. When I left that hospital, I had asked her, where do you want me to go to sober living? I'll go to Phoenix. I don't care where I go. She said, why don't you come home? We'll see if we can work it out. She said, I just want my best friend back, and I haven't seen him in a long time. I said, okay. So then I get home, and she gets rid of the divorce papers at about 6 months. She just says, okay, this is done. At 4 months of sobriety, my mom comes over to the house and says, listen, I need you to come back to work. You were good at what you did, and you were also the biggest thief we had, but you were good at what you did. We need you back at work. And you hear things in meetings. You hear people say, oh, big decisions in your first year. And my sponsor, thank God, was a book guy. And I said, well, I have to check with my sponsor. So I call my sponsor, and I'm telling him, yeah, my mom wants me to come back to work, but I heard that you can't make any big decisions in your first year. And he said, what page is that on? And I said, I don't know. He said, where'd you hear that? I said, in a meeting. He goes, right. It's not in the book. That's what you're supposed to be doing. You go and do that for your mom need. You were supposed to do that anyways, and then you were such a drunk you couldn't do it. So you go back, you tell your mom you're ready to go. And I said, okay. I said, I don't know how to go back in front of all these people that work in the family business and tell them, I've stolen from all of them. He goes, you tell them just like that. I said, do you have any suggestions? He goes, no, I've never had to walk through that, but I'll give you some guys' numbers. Good luck. He said, if I were you, I'd pray before you go. And I thought, okay. And I went in and I sat down with everybody and I said, listen, I've stolen from everybody in this room, whether you know it or not. I've stolen time, I've stolen material of, the things that I've done. And if you can't work with me, I understand. My dad's right-hand man stood up and said, hey, we're with you. If you're sober, we're with you. But if you drink again, we're gone. He said, we know who you are and what you can do, but we also know what you became when you were drinking. And I thought, okay. And we're 43 years into that business now. I'm 23 years sober. So it worked. It's working. And that's only because of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's all the things that I did in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's all the meetings I went to. It's all the commitments I took. It's the steps I did. It's the guys I sponsored. All those things keep me active in Alcoholics Anonymous, that keep me in business and able to do the things that I do for work. Like I say, my wife, she got rid of the divorce papers, and we'll be celebrating 37 years in August. And not if God's willing, because he's more than willing. He's, not if she's willing. She's got a high tolerance of pain. She put up with a lot. And all those things that I wasn't sure how they were going to work out, advice from my sponsor was just start doing what we do and stay out of the way. Things will work out. When you're new, you can't see that far in the future. I can't. I got a job problem. I got living problems. I got a lot of problems I got to figure out, and I want to figure them out now. And when I'm new, this is my thought. And my sponsor said, no, we're just going to work through this process. And whatever your wife says you do this at the house, do it. She says, mow the lawn, mow the lawn. He goes, you're lucky she let you move back in. I said, okay. And I did all that. One of the things is my mom, I started taking my mom with me to the aftercare program at the hospital. And it's a group of people like so it might be codependents and alcoholics in one group. That's how they group the people up. And my mom loved it. And it turned out it was a night for my mom and I. So I would pick my mom up. My mom is a very exotic eater. I would pick my mom up. We would go to Woody's Wharf down in Newport and go to dinner. My mom would have a burnt grilled cheese and French fries and a glass of milk. And every time she was grilled cheese, well done. All right, the same time, same thing every week. And then we would go to that aftercare program, and then on the way home, I would take her grocery shopping. So I would take her list, I would tell her to go sit in the Starbucks inside the store, and I would buy all of her groceries and get that for her. Then I would open all of her things, because she was getting old. I would open all of her things, because her hands were tough. I would make sure everything was open. I'd get back to her house, put everything away. The other thing I did was I started putting money in my mom's purse. I stole money from everybody. You know, if I knew you, I stole something from you. And I used to think, I rationalized it with, okay, she had $100 in her purse and I only took 50. It's like I did her a favor. You know, I felt like I was, Robin Hood, like 10 people are at the house, there's a bunch of purses, looks like a good day for me. Now, I have a job and a house and look like a normal guy, but I'm stealing out of purses because doors are closed and I can't get the money I need. So one of my things for my mom's amends was every time I was at her house, I made sure she had more money when I left than when I got there. Might be $5, might be $20, whatever it is. I always made sure she had money, more money than when I got there. Another thing I did for my mom, part of my amends with my mom was I bought her a purse every year for her birthday. Her birthday was right after Christmas. And I would be in the store and I would try it on. I would walk around with it. Because I always had to carry it when we went somewhere. She would never carry her purse. I'd say, okay, and the people would always look at me, there's that kid again, buy another purse. And I would look in the purse because she was getting older, and I think when they're dark on the inside, they should be lighter. I'm going through all this, and my wife's thinking, you're overthinking this. Just buy her a purse. No, I want to get her one with a light inside. I would always put money in it. I would give her a purse and put money in it. And I was about 8 or 10 years sober, and I asked her one day, because my mom wrote checks. She didn't know how banking worked other than a check. And I said, do you want to go get an ATM card? And she said, oh no. I said, no, I'll teach you how it works. They're great. I mean, you should probably learn how they work. And she said, Patrick, I really don't need one. She said, I don't know, for years now, my purse has just been filling up with money. Just filling up. Every time I go somewhere, it's just full of money. And if I'm going to do one of the volunteer events with the nuns, it's full of money. I can buy all kinds of lottery tickets, and I can get in all the things. And I said, okay, so you don't want to know how it works? She goes, no, I don't need. There's no need for one of those cards for me. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous taught me how to do that kind of stuff. I don't come up with that on my own. My mom got sick in 2018, and I'm current with my mom. We have nothing left to talk about. Her affairs are in order. Everything's good. And she's starting to falter, and she's 88 years old, and she tells me on a Thursday, she said, Patrick, I'm leaving. I said, okay, we don't have anything else to get in order. All your affairs are in order, everything's good. What else can I get for you? And she said, can you call Father Mike? I said, sure, I'll call Father Mike. So when I called the priest to come over to the house, everybody had made it home, and it was just the 5 siblings around the bed. All the grandkids, nieces, nephews weren't there. There's a lot of them. Weren't there. It was just a rare time that all that worked out. Sat down, said a prayer, and my mom went to bed on Sunday and died. Went to bed, gone. And I thought, that's the way to get out of here. I mean, I watched my dad go through cancer twice, and I watched my mom, she just said, I'm leaving, and she left. And that's the way out of here. And I tell you one thing, it's so much easier burying somebody when you're current than as to when you're drunk. My dad, he and I had the discussion. He knew what I was up to, and he had helped me, but I wasn't sober. It wasn't the same as what it was with my mom when my mom passed. And it was so much, like I say, it was so much easier to get into that space with my mom, and just, I didn't have to hide anything. There was nothing going on. And I'm so grateful for that. Some of the things I learned along the way in Alcoholics Anonymous, a guy told me when I was newly sober, if you like everybody in Alcoholics Anonymous, you're not going to enough meetings. I thought, man, I go to a lot of meetings. He said, and if you think they all like you, you're not paying attention either. And I thought, what kind of noise is that? It's true. It's true. And if I stop helping people, and by the way, I don't get to pick and choose who I help. I don't get to pick the guy who pulls up in the nice car. I don't get to say, that's the guy I want to help. That's not how it works. I get the guy who's, just soiled his pants and he's laying on the front of Charlie Street and he wants help. That's my guy. Put him in your car. Oh, no. I don't get to choose. I don't get to choose who I get to help in Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to tell you about my first sponsee because I'm really good at sponsoring. And I'm probably the best you guys have ever heard. So I'm about 10 months sober, and I think a guy asked me at the beach, hey, will you sponsor me? I'm barely surviving here. I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. I call my sponsor. A guy wants me to sponsor. He goes, so sponsor him. All right, what do I tell him? He goes, get his number. Give him your number. Tell him to meet you tomorrow night at our Monday night meeting. I said, okay. Got it. So we have a little conversation, and he says, okay, and I'm getting in the car thinking, I'm going to be the greatest sponsor ever. I'm going to keep this guy sober, not realizing that I can't keep myself sober. I'm not going to keep anybody else sober. And I'm so excited. We get in the car. We're on 15th Street in Newport Beach, and I got 5 minutes. Good, I'm almost over. So we're driving down the street. He's behind me, and I look in the rearview mirror, and if you're familiar with Newport Beach, he pulls into Cassidy's. It's a bar on 22nd Street. And I'm thinking, okay, I've drank there. Where's he going? I call him up. I said, hey, where are you going? And he said, I've been thinking about it. I go, for 7 blocks? We just left the meeting. It's been 4 minutes. He said, yeah, my problem is really not alcohol. It's mostly cocaine. Man, I go, I've had that problem. It didn't work well for me. I don't know. I called my sponsor back, and I said, listen, that guy I called you about, he's drinking. He said, the guy just now? I said, yeah. And he said, are you with him? And I said, no. And he goes, that's working out fine then. Call me tomorrow. On my way, I went home. And I saw my sponsor the next day. I called him in the morning. We talked about it. And he said, listen, you can't keep anybody sober. Who did you think you were, Superman? He said, guy asked you to sponsor him. Your answer is yes. He needs help. You help him. And that's Alcoholics Anonymous. So I can't keep anybody sober. I was sure at that point, I got 10 months. My God, I can keep people sober now. I'm not capable of keeping anybody sober. And I found that was a quick lesson for me. This Chuck D guy I was talking about, he was my dad's sponsor. And at 32 days of sobriety, I have my dad's 24-hour day book. And it's got all of his guys in it. And I see this guy's birthday on April 9th. And I call him up. And he said, well, how do you know it's my AA birthday? He goes, don't tell me you're actually sober. I said, yeah, I got 32 days. And he said, oh my God. I started having conversations with him, and I started keeping in contact with him, and I started talking with him. I meet with him every Tuesday morning for coffee. He's 50 years sober now. I'm 23 years sober. I meet for coffee. I'm speaking at a meeting in Tustin one morning. I'm about 10 years sober, and I tell the story about calling this guy up. This guy comes walking up to me, and he said, this guy Chuck you're talking about, is this his last name? And I said, it is. Do you know him? And he goes, he's my dad.
Oh, yeah, right.
I go, wow, he's your dad? He goes, yeah. I go, does he know you're sober? He didn't tell his dad he was sober at that point. He had about 90 days, and he wasn't going to pretend he was sober and do all this. I now sponsor that guy. If Alcoholics Anonymous, the wheel in Alcoholics Anonymous, how everything works in here, I gotta be here, I gotta be active in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I gotta be willing to help other people. Once I stop doing that or I stop coming here, game's over for me. I don't have a chance out there. Thank you guys for letting me share.